and welcome to Baron's Den for another look at the new rosters that have been leaked from the Season 3 Blood Bowl rulebook. And next up, it's Dwarves. And I've picked Dwarves because they're one of the more controversial ones. This is one where there's a lot of people who are a bit emotional about this, a bit hurt. We knew it was coming to a certain extent. We knew that Dwarves needed something. Question you've got to ask yourself is, have they gone too far? Have they gone far enough? Or have they got it just right? Let's find out with the Dwarf roster. Okay, starting off with Dwarf linemen. This for me is one of the most contentious things, and that is the Dwarf linemen are pretty much the same as they were 4, 3, 4, 5, 10 at the cost of 70,000. Where they've changed is their skills and skill access. So as you can see over here in the primary section, they've got devious as well as general, which is actually a really good buff because it means now that Dwarf blockers, well, they're called blockers in the old game, they would only be able to get Sneaky Git, for example, on a secondary, Dirty Player on a primary, whereas now they can get both on primaries. And now with the new rules about randoming, about you roll twice and you pick the one out of the two, it's even easier to random Sneaky Git or Dirty Player to the point where you could get a Dirty Player Sneaky Git lineman for about 100k maybe. Maybe if you're lucky 90k, but certainly 100k is definitely doable. Whereas in the old game, it would have been 130k to have that Dirty Player Dwarf lineman. So that's good. And also, in fact, no, let's talk about the negatives and we'll finish off with the positive. We'll do the old sandwich, shall we? So 3 things now that aren't so good. First of all, they've lost agility access. Long story short, all the dwarves have lost agility access. So no longer are they going to be using skills like dodge, or that's about it actually. What else would a dwarf want? Defensive, I suppose, but these guys have got it anyway, which we'll come to in a bit. What else really is that important for a dwarf on the agility side of things? I mean, things like sidestep can be useful, but it's not something you'd have ever spent on a secondary anyway. So really, it's dodge. They've lost access to dodge, which for a blocker isn't horrendous, but for when we get to things like runners and blitzers, it's going to be problematic. But worst of all, I think, is strength's been moved into secondary. Now I've lobbied for a long time now that dwarves needed a change to make them more fun to play against without them still losing some of their potency, and I feel like the strength move was a step too far, because I just think that now a lot of the skills that, I mean, guard and mighty blow are 2 of the skills that dwarf linemen would be going for, and they're not going to be getting them as much now. I think we've also got elite skills which add an extra 10k. So now if they want to choose mighty blow, a dwarf lineman, or choose guard, that could be 50k or 40k, is it? I forget what chosen secondaries are in this version of the game. Now that is if guard and mighty blow are elite skills, but I'm pretty sure they will be, if that hasn't already been confirmed. So it just means that getting those dwarf linemen to do what they're there to do, and that is support, is really hard. And it is more important for dwarves to do this than even the orcs, because the orcs do have some strength 4 players, or admittedly not as many, but they have a strength 5 troll who stays on the pitch the whole time, and 2 strength 4 big uns. Dwarves have they're all strength 3 apart from the deathroller, which is only going to be around for a drive sometimes. So I think that was harsh. Moving strength to secondary was really harsh for these guys anyway. They lost tackle as well, which is going to be, I think that was more the headline news, but I think a lot of us were expecting that. I'd said years ago that I thought tackle should be taken from the linemen and put onto the blitzers, because as I was making the point that in some cases some of the dwarf linemen wouldn't miss tackle too much, because they're often used in the scrum on the line of scrimmage, where they're going to be hitting other players who probably don't have dodge, and it's not like they can dodge out and tag a fast runner or a scampering Amazon or gutter runner very often, unless you've those players are walking into your lineman. What I'm trying to say is that you could get around a dwarf lineman before, and I thought by putting them on the blitzers, the more mobile piece, the faster piece, and the piece, ironically, with better agility. Again, we'll come to that later. I thought that might be a better use of tackle anyway, but it also means that it's not so egregious for the complete dodge teams like stunties and elves and Amazons that you have to stand players on the line of scrimmage next to these guys, and it just felt a bit overpowered that they immediately could get into you. So I don't think that losing tackle was a bad thing. And actually, what they've gained defensive is really interesting. Defensive is a really useful skill that I did not give enough credit to in the last edition. And ironically, one of the ways I've noticed it more is when Amazons came out, and also when Blood Bowl 3, on some of their one-player modes, the teams have got defensive built in. And although the computer plays rubbish, sometimes I'll go to hit a block and I think, oh, defensive. They've got defensive. That's really ruining my plans. Now it has to be said, defensive is much more effective on a strength 4 or 5 player. However, strength 3 defensive with block is going to force sometimes your opponents into doing 1-die blocks. And if you've managed to get some players with guard, your blitzers and your slayers still have strength access on primary, then having that baked in for free could be really, really useful. And that is going to take practice and games to know how to make the best use of having defensive instead of tackle. So I don't see that as a bad thing. I just see that as something that it's going to take Dwarf players time to get their heads around on how to use that best. And it does make them defensive, as the name suggests. It's quite a defensive looking team now, which I like, and I like for them. So no problem. That's obviously good. I've got no problem with that change. Losing agility, I don't think is the end of the world. It's that really hurts them. So that's the Dwarf linemen. Dwarf runners, they haven't changed much at all. They're pretty much the same as they were. I think, actually, I should have put this in green because I think they are cheaper. Let me double check. Or are they the same? Let's have a quick look. They are 5k cheaper, so I shall have to change that to green in a minute. But yeah, so they are 5k cheaper. They have their general and primary skill access as usual. Strength on the secondary, but no agility. No agility at all. So, yes, it was secondary before, but the runner was the one place that you thought dodge is useful for them because it will keep them in the mix. And should they need to dodge out with their agility of 3+, it was doable. It was good. And now it's just impossible to have that, which hurts them definitely. Having sprint does not really make up for it, but it's not a bad skill to have as it's free. It's actually cheaper. It's a cheaper player now, and you get sprint, so that's not bad. But this hurts them. Hurts this player more than any other player on the team. So yeah, apologies, I've forgotten to highlight that as a positive that it's come down in cost a bit. There you go, fix the cost now. So in green because they have dropped by 5k. Anyway, on to the Dwarf Blitzer. So yeah, Dwarf Blitzer is one of the positions I think again that's been hit quite hard. Essentially, they are the same except their stats. They're 20k more in cost. They're now edge busted, which I don't get because they were always supposed to be the more mobile piece. That's the whole point of a blitzer. It's supposed to be a bit more quicker, mobile than your average linemen. And they're the stoic ones, the long beards, the armor clad ones. The blitzer was supposed to be a little bit more agile, so really don't understand why they've done that, and I don't think that was necessary. Obviously, they've lost agility access as well. Another player that you might have benefited from dodge, and of course they can retain their general and strength and passing on a secondary. Skill wise, he looks a bit better because they keep block and thick skull, but they gain tackle and diving tackle. Tackle they've had off the blockers, which will be useful. He'll be the player that you're going to want to go hunting the ball or just hunting to kill dodge players. And then this diving tackle, again, I learned new appreciation for this when I went to Beachhead a couple of years ago, and I played against the Slan team, and I hadn't played Slan before, and the blitzers were so annoying. Diving tackle, I was running Skaven at the time, so obviously with gutter runners I'd want to dodge a lot, and I just kept forgetting about diving tackle because you don't see it that often being used. Well, I don't anyway. Certainly you don't see it a lot on Blood Bowl 3 or in NAF style because you've only got a small pool of skills and diving tackle just isn't up there, but it is incredibly useful. So to have a skill like that baked in, I do think is really good. It's just a shame it's cost that whilst losing that. If they'd have kept their agility, that would be easier to swallow. But the fact that they've been hit by that and they've gone up by 20k, I don't. I think that was a step too far for the Dwarf Blitzer. Right, the Troll Slayer. Good news for the Troll Slayer is I don't think he's gotten worse at all. I think he's just slightly got better. He is pretty much the same. He can now pass, and he's passing on a 5+ as well. So he's passing better than my zombies. Again, it's probably never going to come into your games, so it doesn't really matter too much. But at least, should your Troll Slayer be the only player who can get to the ball, he can physically pass it should he need to. But that's going to happen once in a million encounters probably. They've lost agility but gained devious. Now, for the Troll Slayer, that's probably a good offset, because is there many skills that you'd really want on a Troll Slayer? I mean, dodge obviously is useful anyway, because it saves you from getting knocked down, but with an Edge 4+, you are not looking to dodge with this guy very often. Sidestep could be useful because of maybe getting caught in a frenzy trap, so it can be useful to keep you on the pitch, but you've got strength access, so you can always get stand firm anyway. So no, I don't think that's a bad thing. And then it's got this Hatred Troll, which Hatred as a rule is pretty cool, quite powerful, but when you see that it's just against a troll, it's going to come up hardly ever, apart from in the classic Dwarf versus Orc grudge match. But on the whole, there's no problem here. Troll Slayer's still good, still fine. The Deathroller, this one's more of an interesting change. So the Deathroller is more reliable now because it's learn a 4+, not learn a 5+. I mean, you're still probably not going to want to throw a reroll at it, but that is an improvement you cannot deny. It's got the devious skills on primary, so it can get. It's already got Dirty Play. It can get Sneaky Git dead easy. So it can be turned into a proper fouling machine. And with some of those other devious skills, like is it the Innovator one, which is to do with the secret weapons? I can't remember which one, but there's a couple there that could be really useful for the Deathroller. It's now movement 5, which, believe it or not, I actually think is an important thing, because having that extra bit of movement really does allow you to get to your target, allows you to blitz. It's got Juggernaut, so it's a fairly reliable blitzer. And so having that extra movement is really welcome. It's lost its agility access, but again, on this player, that's not too bad. A dodging Deathroller is annoying, I suppose, but I would argue that it's not worth the money to do that on anyway. So really, it's the that's not a problem. I've put Dirty Player in red because it obviously used to be Dirty Player +2, but it seems like the +1/+2 has gone now for a Mighty Blow and Dirty Player, so it just says Dirty Player. So obviously that is worse than it was before. So it's not as good, it's not as potent at the foul as it used to be. And that's the Deathroller. So, additional rules, more outrage, because the rerolls have gone up. You thought after you've already attacked this team on several levels that you might leave them with 50k rerolls, but no, 60k rerolls. They've also lost Old World Classic, which means a lot of their star player access is gone. So, from what I can remember, that's no Griff, that's no Cindy, that's no Zug, no Carla. There's lots of basically good star players who are Old World Classic, so they're stuck basically with Dwarf ones now. But they do have Brawling Brutes and Bribery and Corruption. Now, I think Brawling Brutes, is that the one where they get extra star player points for casualties over touchdowns? So 3 for casualties, 2 for touchdowns. That's not confirmed. Don't take my word for that. That's just something I think I read. If that's the case, that's good for them, because I think they will be causing more casualties than scoring touchdowns. And then Bribery Corruption is actually really good. I mean, I've been, for Mr. Positive, I've been quite negative about the Dwarfs, but Bribery and Corruption is really good, because it means they can get those bribes half price, so that might make you feel the Deathroller a bit more now, which I've run the Deathroller in ladder with Dwarfs, and it was brilliant. It's Dwarves are fairly reliable at staying on the pitch, so having you can get the Deathroller in a team and a bench, which means when he does get sent off, you've still got Dwarves ready to come in, and as long as that Deathroller does a bit of damage on his way out, he can make up for his value. Obviously at 170 though, that's 2 good players or 3 average players. So yeah, bribery and corruption is really good for the dwarves. So they're going back to their. I did say in the Discord channel that I didn't think that was very dwarf-like. What I should have said is that isn't very Warhammer dwarf-like. So in Warhammer, dwarves are very honourable. They don't like oath breakers or breaking rules or breaking promises. So the idea of them being corrupt and bribing and cheating doesn't seem very dwarf-like. But in Blood Bowl, in the early editions, the dwarves were terrible cheaters. So actually, maybe it is them going back to their roots a bit more. Right. I thought it was worth talking about a couple of the special rules. Obviously, none of those players have gotten steady. It's just the deathroller that's got big guy, so they can all do the secure the ball action, which I talked about in the Necro video. Um, but basically, it means that you can go and pick up the ball on a 2+ as long as there's not people around, and it ends your activation, which is useful for the doors because all of them can do it now. So, should it be a dodgy kick, and your runner doesn't happen to be close by, any of your players could go for the secure the ball as long as it's not within range of an opposition player. And even if it was, perhaps you could go and kill that player, allowing you to pick up with one of your less agile players who can then hand off. Because obviously there's no dice roll to be made for the person doing the handing off, it's for the person catching. So there is potential, I think, in the secure the ball for the dwarves. And then hatred, when this player performs a block action against a player with the same keyword as that shown in the brackets, this player may re-roll a single player down result. So there we go, back to the Troll Slayer. It's got Troll in the brackets. So its hatred of the Troll means that should you roll, I don't know, a 2-die block, and you roll Skull Skull, you'd be able to re-roll one of those skulls. Or if you rolled Skull Push, you could re-roll the skull. You can re-roll one player down. Which is brilliant, isn't it? I mean, we've seen things modifying the both down results, but I don't know if we've ever seen anything that could modify the player down result other than, your classic rerolls or pro or something. So that is really good. The downside being, how often is a slayer gonna be blocking a troll? I mean, it will happen because dwarves and orcs is a classic matchup. There's trolls on quite a few teams, I suppose. Goblins, snotlings, Black Orcs, and potentially the Chaos teams like Renegades and Chosen. So, Underworld. So there are, perhaps it has got more utility than I thought. But I just thought it's a Troll Slayer, so I get that it's Troll, but the whole point of Troll Slayer, the name Troll Slayer, is it's keen on good at killing enemies of that size. So that should really encompass all big guys in Blood Bowl. And then your giant slayers are good at slaying monsters of giant proportions, and your dragon slayers of dragon proportions, and demon slayers of demon proportions. So a troll slayer for me, I would have given it hatred big guy. Maybe that would have been unbalanced and too overpowered. I don't know. At least with the troll, it is probably the troll and the ogre are the most frequently seen big guys because of the amount of teams that can take one. But even so, there's going to be plenty of games where that slayer's punching things that's not a troll. So how much that comes into play, we'll have to find out when we play the game. Alright, so to finish off with the pros and cons of the dwarves. Obviously, if you saw the Necro one, I only had one thing in the cons there, and look at this. So I'm actually going to do the cons first, because it's always nice to finish a bit more positive. So, they've lost all agility access. The loss of tackle and strength access on the linemen, that's big. And it's more for me, the strength access, than it is the tackle. More expensive, but less agile blitzers. The nerf to DP, +2 on the deathroller, so the dirty player +2. The fact that their rerolls have gone up 10k. And now they have no access to the old world classic stars, of which there are some good ones. So not good at all. Lots of cons there. However, there are also some pros to this team. So the lineman gaining defensive and primary access to DV skills does push them into a new area. People are going to have to get used to dwarf linemen. They can be very different to the way you played them before. You will be able to develop them into being more the way they used to be. But don't underestimate the power of defensive and the fact that you can really turn these into cheating little so-and-sos. Passing and hatred on slayers is a pro. I mean, how good that is, I don't know. Hatred only going to come in now and then, and the passing is very rarely to never going to happen. Diving tackle and tackle on the blitzers is good. I just wish it didn't come at the expense of the more expensive, less and being less agile. Or in fact, the expensive is fine if that was all, but it's the fact that they've lost the agility I think isn't fair to them. Faster, devious, and less lonely deathroller is all good, and I think that probably does outweigh the nerf to DP +2, because DP +2 was great, but obviously you had to be fouling to do that, and sometimes you might just want to be blitzing with the deathroller, because the foul can mean that you just get that really expensive piece sent off earlier. Sprinting runners, it's not a massive pro, it's a little tiny one, but at least it's something. And then the bribery and corruption and brawling brutes could be quite big, particularly if you're going to run the death roller now. Being able to have half-price bribes, so like 2 bribes for 100k, is pretty good. But of course, that extra bit of money you might save, you're going to end up spending on getting the death roller into your team in the first place. So it's still questionable about whether you'd be able to get the bribes in order to keep that death roller on. But if you might not even bother with the death roller, you might be saving the bribes because you're just going to be doing lots of fouling with your devious linemen. And then the brawling brutes, it might help them to level up quicker if they're getting more SPP for casualties. If that is indeed the skill. I'm going to reiterate that I'm not 100% sure on that one. So we'll see. So overall, what do I think about the dwarfs? I've given them a down. I'm not anywhere near as despondent about them as other people seem to be. Could I still see myself winning games with them? Of course, yeah. Would I put them in like this new tier 4? Obviously not. They're not tier 1. And the tiers are, it depends what version of the game you're playing and at what TV you're playing. But generally speaking, are they one of the best teams in Blood Bowl now? No, I don't think they are. But they're not one of the worst either. They're still going to be a pain to play against, but just not in the same monotonous, awful way that they used to be. And I think they'll be more interesting to play as. I'm looking forward to giving them a go, because I do love some of this stuff. I just wish it didn't come at the expense of some of this, like the main two being losing strength on the linemen and losing the agility on the blitzers. They're the two that bother me the most, I think, because it's just going to be so easy to tag those players. And the fact the blitzers are going to, they've just lost that agility. And their cost has gone up as well. Strength on the lineman means that you're not going to be able to pick up guard mighty blow anywhere near as easy as you could. Which I know was the design, wasn't it? It was one of the things people were after, was to stop dwarves from having the guard spam and the mighty blow spam. But yeah, I just wish there might have been another way of doing it. But like I was saying, I haven't given them a double arrow down, which I might for one team coming up. But yeah, I don't think you can argue this is as potent as they used to be. Now, obviously, there's going to be lots of different people with different opinions. Some people might be looking at this thinking, I actually think that you can do more things with the dwarves now. Other people will be thinking this team is completely wrecked and is unplayable, and which I do think is an overreaction. I'm just a bit like with the Chaos Dwarves. They're a bit more interesting, but not quite as good. And that's where I'm going to leave it with the dwarves. I hope you enjoyed it, and obviously not perhaps if you're a dwarf coach, but it is good to see and compare how these teams have changed to how they used to be. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one, where hopefully we'll be tackling another team. Maybe a less controversial one next time. Right. Cheers very much. I'll see you in a bit.